In this video, I'm going to show you how to do a very basic measurement technique in science. I'm going to show you how to use a tool called a graduated cylinder to measure the volume of a liquid substance. This measurement technique is extremely easy to do and straightforward. There's maybe one or two sort of difficult parts along the way, but I'm confident that after watching this video, you will be fully equipped to measure liquid volumes using a graduated cylinder. Let's get started. The very first step in measuring a liquid volume is to choose the correct graduated cylinder for the application that you're using it. This large graduated cylinder is able to measure large volumes or large objects, but because it's so big, it's hard to read exactly where liquid volumes rise to in this graduated cylinder. On the other hand, this small graduated cylinder, it isn't able to measure big volumes and it isn't able to measure big objects, but because it's so small, it's really easy to read and get an accurate amount of volume when you read the scale on this smaller graduated cylinder. You need to choose the graduated cylinder that works best for the purpose that you're using it. The next sub-step is if you're measuring the mass of a substance, like if, for instance, you're measuring the density of something, you want to make sure that the next thing you do is put your graduated cylinder on a balance and press the tare, T-A-R-E, or the 0 button so that your graduated cylinder is sitting on the balance and it's already adjusting for the mass of the graduated cylinder. That way, when you pour the liquid into the cylinder, the scale, the balance underneath it is going to read the mass of the liquid that you pour into it. That's an aside. If you're just measuring volume, you don't have to do that step. Step 2 is very simple. Pour in the liquid that you're measuring, however much of that liquid you're supposed to pour in. And then step 3, you need to round the position of the bottom of the curve at the top of the liquid. What you're going to find when you pour a liquid into a graduated cylinder is that liquid like to climb the sides. There's going to be a curve to the liquid. You always measure to the bottom of that curve. That curve is called the meniscus. And with these graduated cylinders, you're going to measure to the nearest tenth of a milliliter. That's how most graduated cylinders work. And then finally, if you're also measuring the mass, you just need to remember, now that you've poured the liquid in, record the number that reads on the balance. That's going to be the mass of your liquid substance. So to clarify the concept of what a meniscus is, let me show you what one looks like. This is typically what water does. Water will climb the outside of a graduated cylinder, so there's this curved area in the middle that's lower, and then it curves up toward the outside. That's what a meniscus is. Many fluids, when poured into a graduated cylinder, will climb the outside of the graduated cylinder. What you do is you read always from the very bottom of the meniscus. And to do it, you need to make sure that you follow a few simple steps. Make sure that your graduated cylinder is sitting on a level surface, level countertop, a level desk. Then make sure that you bring your eye very close to the graduated cylinder. You need your eye as close as you can to the scale so that you can read exactly where that line is. And then finally, measure from the very, 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 very bottom of the meniscus. Notice that the meniscus itself has a little bit of thickness. You measure from the bottom of the thickness of that film at the top, the very, very bottom of the meniscus. As I look at this measuring device on the screen and I see that 20 mark on it, I realize that the bottom of the meniscus falls just below the 20 mark, and I'm going to round the number accordingly. Now that I've explained the process for measuring the volume of a liquid substance in a graduated cylinder, let me show you how it works. Here I've got a graduated cylinder that is sitting on top of a balance so I can measure the mass. The balance has been zeroed out, so any mass that I add into the graduated cylinder will read directly on the balance. That's going to give me the mass. I'm also going to need to measure volume because density is mass divided by volume. To measure the volume, I'm going to pour in some of my liquid and then read the scale. Now I've made sure that this balance and then Consequently, the graduated cylinder are sitting on a perfectly flat surface so that the liquid level on the top doesn't tilt and throw things off. Here I'm going to pour in some vegetable oil to the graduated cylinder so that I can measure it. Okay, so now I have some vegetable oil in there, and I'm going to read the volume of it, and I have the mass of it on the balance itself. As I read the volume, I'm going to make sure that I'm checking the very, very bottom of the curved meniscus, and I'm getting right up next to it. And it appears that this volume is at 19 milliliters, but it's a little bit above the 19 mark. In fact, it's just barely above the 19 mark. I'm going to read this as 19.1 milliliters, rounding to the tenths place of precision. And that's how you measure the volume of a liquid substance directly using a graduated cylinder.